be talking about the biggest stories that matter to you the most. Breaking news, John Calipari is finalizing a 5-year deal to become the Arkansas Razorbacks' next head coach, covering college sports like no one else. The biggest guests in sports. We now welcome in Hall of Famer Jim Calhoun.
Such a pride I had, I came to Connecticut.
The legend, Tim Tebow, joins us.
We'll run it back. I like it.
The legend, Herschel Walker. Welcome in, everybody. Little Wednesday morning edition, Air Torres Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Air Torres. Hope everybody's doing well. Hope everybody's having a great day. We don't normally do Wednesday live shows, but we had an awesome night of college hoops, plus a lot of college football. And so today, people, we got a lot to react to. We're going to open college hoops, Louisville versus Kentucky. I called it a smackdown in kind of the title of today's show. I don't think that's inaccurate. Louisville wins 96-88, a comfortable victory for Louisville that probably, frankly, could have been much worse. We'll talk about that, and we will talk about it from the Kentucky perspective because there is certainly a lot to discuss on the Kentucky side of things, what went wrong and what needs to get fixed. From there, we'll talk about the rest of a busy night in college hoops. Thought Gonzaga looked awesome. Thought Illinois looked awesome. Michigan, we'll see. The Florida Gators I tried to warn you about. And also this, how about my Central Connecticut Blue Devils smacking Boston College at home? Boston College, a shell of a power conference program right now, so we'll discuss all that. Then we will do some college football. The playoff rankings are out. There's a couple things I want to, couple things that grind my gears about those rankings, and then we will wrap Auburn. They ready to risk it all for Summerall? I don't know, but it sure feels like that is where it's trending. John Summerall, is he emerging as the favorite of the Auburn for the Auburn coaching job? One report says the answer is yes. Before we get started, a couple quick reminders. Make sure you're subscribed to Aaron Torres Pod YouTube channel. On YouTube, 65,000 plus subscribers. I think we can get to 70K before the new year. We need your help. We need your support. Tell a friend about this awesome show and everything that we're doing on this channel. Also, you can listen to the show on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. We really do appreciate your support. Leave a 5-star rating and review as well. Before we get started, also, you know what we got to do? We got to thank our friends. We got to thank the official ticketing partner of the Aaron Torres Pod, SeatGeek and the SeatGeek app. Okay, so listen, it's that time of year. Maybe you want to go to a college football game. Maybe you want to go to a college basketball game. Maybe you're mad that the Louisville-Kentucky basketball game was before football this year, but you still want tickets to see that game instead. Well, guess what? All you got to do is go to SeatGeek, okay? SeatGeek is America's #1 ticketing app, over 28 million downloads. What I love about SeatGeek, you go right on that app. They tell you what tickets are good, what tickets are not good. Green dot means go ahead and purchase. Red dot means that ticket might be a little bit of sketchy. Go ahead and stay away. Also rate every ticket 1 through 10. So I love SeatGeek, love what they're about, but I also love this. They take care of listeners of the Aaron Torres Pod. That is right. For people who have not taken advantage yet, remember, SeatGeek.com, if you use promo code Torres, that's promo code TORRES, promo code Torres, TORRES, you get $20 off your first purchase. Should mention, doesn't just apply to college football or college basketball, concerts, shows, etc. I'm actually going to a hockey game in a couple weeks when I'm back in Vegas for Thanksgiving. SeatGeek.com, promo code Torres. SeatGeek.com, promo code Torres gets you $20 off your first purchase. With that said, it is a busy Wednesday morning across the world of college sports. There is no more time to waste. So, people, let's go ahead and get to the topic of the day. Topic of the day, listen, you know, college football playoff rankings are awesome, but I do want to start with college hoops. And I actually think the two are kind of intertwined, right? I think that ESPN has made a concerted effort after these college football playoff rankings, put some college hoops on that may entertain America. And it was certainly entertaining at the KFC Yum Center Tuesday night in Louisville, Kentucky, when the Louisville Cardinals hosted the Kentucky Wildcats. Listen, I know the conversation is it too early on the calendar? I say all the time, I don't tell fans how to feel. If you're a Kentucky fan, if you're a Louisville fan, you're certainly entitled to feel the way that you do. All I know is that once the ball was tipped, awesome opening, probably 7-8 minutes, as highly competitive basketball as I've seen in November in a long time. The problem is from about the 8-minute mark of the first half till the 8-minute mark of the second half, a total dominant effort from Louisville. Kentucky cuts it back late. Louisville misses a few free throws, but in the end, Louisville gets the victory, a statement win for the Louisville Cardinals as they go ahead and take care of business against the Kentucky Wildcats, 96-88. I could be mistaken. I believe it's the first time since the 2019-2020 season that Louisville took care of Kentucky. So a lot to dive into, a lot to react to. I know Louisville fans are happy. I know Kentucky fans are frustrated. Let's talk both sides. And I do want to start, listen, sometimes the more interesting story is in the losing locker room. And I think in this case, it might actually be. I do think we owe it to Louisville to start with them and start with the positives. Because, again, when you say 96-88, an 8-point victory, I don't know that you can say it was a butt-kicking. But if you watch the game, it actually kind of was a butt-kicking pretty much. I can't quite say from start to finish, but it was a butt-kicking as far as how the game played out. I know it was an 8-point margin of victory, but if you watch the game, Louisville was up by 20 in the second half. Couple things. Kentucky, to its credit, made a little bit of a run. Louisville also missed a crap ton of free throws. So the 8-point margin isn't really reflective of, kind of how one-sided it was. I'd add this. That's part of the reason I didn't go live on Tuesday night, because I said, feels like both fan bases might be a little bit mad after this one. Louisville feels like they should have won by more. Kentucky struggled, but Louisville does get the victory in a game that, as I said, frankly, just was not as close as the final score probably indicated. In terms of what stood out with Louisville, a couple things with Louisville. First of all, I think bigger picture, this is what I've been talking about with Louisville since this roster came together back in April. Okay, I remember I was at the Final Four. Producer Matt and I were in a hotel lobby doing a live show. And I remember, Louisville, if you remember, they lost early in the tournament. The portal opens after the opening weekend, and it's like boom, or after this, I think it was the Sweet 16, whatever. But boom, boom, boom. It's like Louisville is just getting kid after kid after kid. Ryan Conwell, Adrian Woolley, Isaac McNeely. And you're like, oh my God, they just put together a filthy roster, and a roster that I think really kind of wanted to play the way that Pat Kelsey plays. Led by Mikal Brown Jr., point guard, a lot of three-point shooting around him, and some big, athletic, mobile bigs. And so I just bring it up because I thought Wednesday night was the night that it all came to fruition, right? The night where all of the pieces, all of the planning, it all came together in a team that put up 96 points on Kentucky and very much looks like a ACC contender for sure, and a team that, as I've said, and as I think most people have said, one that is good enough to be playing in Indianapolis on the final weekend. Specifics on the game for Louisville, besides the fact that they were just awesome, and they, the offense, when it's clicking at the highest level, is elite. 53 points in the first half. I think the first thing is, listen, Mikal Brown Jr. is who I told you he was. And it's funny, right? Because with Mikal Brown Jr., he had the head-to-head game with Darren Peterson. He did not play well. And I think there were a lot of people, some of them wearing blue. Oh, he's overrated. Oh, he's this. Oh, he's that. No, he's not. He's awesome. I said it from the beginning. I said it really, my infatuation, if you want to call it that, with Mikal Brown Jr. really started in July. If you remember that Team USA U19 event happened, they go over to Switzerland, and I think in hindsight, let's go ahead and talk about it, because Mikal Brown Jr. he was second in scoring, led the team in assists, great three-point shooting, and look who was on that team in hindsight. Koa Pete was on that team. You may have seen him drop 30 on Florida a few days ago. AJ DeBonsa was on that team. He's been awesome so far for BYU. Tyron Stokes, I know it's been an interesting couple weeks, but he is a very talented player. And I just bring it up because Mikal Brown Jr. was the best player on that Team USA team. And so the notion that he had one bad game against Kansas, what does it mean? It means nothing. He had a bad game, and I think on Monday night, or I keep saying Monday, I don't know why Monday, but Wednesday night, or Tuesday night, I think it was just so reflective of who this dude is and what makes him special. 6'4", 6'5". He's a dude who had two separate growth spurts in high school. went from like 5'11 to 6'2 and then 6'2 to 6'5, completely in control of the game. And I think what stands out to me is that in a sport that has never been older, like you think about all the players that were on the court on Tuesday night, I'm going to get that right eventually. Tuesday night on both sides, he was the best player. And think about how old some of those guys are. And that's not a knock. This is just the world of college basketball. Isaac McNeely, older player. Ryan Conwell, fourth, fifth-year player. This is for Louisville. Denzel Aberdeen, fourth-year player. Otega Owe, fourth-year player. The best dude on the floor was an 18-year-old freshman in Mikal Brown Jr. If you watch the game, you know the stats. Finished the game with 29 points and 5 assists. Had 20 points at halftime. And I think the other thing that's interesting about it is if you watch the game, you know he cramped up pretty bad in the second half and had to miss, I don't know about significant amount of time, but probably 4 or 5 minutes of game action. So if he had 29 points and 5 assists and he missed 4 or 5 minutes of game action, imagine what he could have done if he had played, the full 36, 37 minutes that Pat Kelsey probably planned on playing him. Completely dominant. There's a number of plays that you can go to. I think the one that probably stood out to me the most, it was right before halftime, is that Kentucky's trying to do anything to get some momentum going into the half. And Mikal Brown Jr., final play, just blows, boom, right past Jalen Lowe, easy bucket, ends the half, and Louisville's in control. I think beyond Mikal Brown Jr., a couple other thoughts. First of all, Sonata Frew, the big man from Germany. I'll say this. I didn't know that it was apparently it was a thing in the Louisville, Kentucky media all week long that Kentucky had some big advantage in the paint. I don't know that I thought that coming in. I think I said in the preview that I did on Monday night, I said it's going to be controlled by the point guards and it's going to be controlled by the big guys. Well, we know Mikal Brown Jr. dominated. And then I thought Sonata Frew had an awesome game down low. As a matter of fact, Matt, you could pop up the tweet that I sent you this morning. So I said this after the game, or I guess there was technically about 30 seconds left. I didn't tweet a Louisville win because I wanted to make sure they closed it out. But I said there are a lot of reasons it looks like Louisville is going to beat Kentucky tonight, but maybe one of the most underrated ones is this. Sonata Frew has absolutely bullied Brandon Garrison down low. Key hidden X factor in that game. So I'll say this about Sonata Frew. One, he had Brandon Garrison in a blender. Brandon Garrison, former McDonald's All-American. Sonata Frew, for people who do not know, 6'11". He's from Germany. Yes, he's one of those older European players that has come to college basketball. They're all, every time I turn on a game, it's Andrea Jelovic, Kentucky, Luka Bogovic, North Carolina, David Mirkovic at Illinois, Sonata Frew at Louisville. I just thought that they had no answers for him down low, and Brandon Garrison couldn't do much of anything. 10 points, 7 rebounds, 2 blocks for Sonata Frew. I thought Ali Khalifa gave them some good minutes off the bench. Remember, Ali Khalifa is a player that played for Mark Pope at BYU. He enters the portal. I mean, there are tweets you can find of me saying, if Mark Pope brings this kid to Lexington, because I think at the time the thought was he was going to come to Lexington, follow Mark Pope. I said, that guy's going to be a crowd favorite. Well, I bring it up because I thought he played well off the bench. I don't know that the stats fully back it up. But the one thing I will tell you, I mentioned this, by the way, 4 points, 4 rebounds, 4 assists for Ali Khalifa. I'll say this. With Louisville, I think I've mentioned this, but in October, I was in Vegas for a speaking engagement, okay? It was college basketball, NIL stuff. And there was somebody on the Louisville staff at this event. And so after my panel, I'm kind of just walking the hallway, grabbing a water, whatever. And somebody stops me and says, dude, work with Louisville basketball. I won't name his name, but, love what you do. Love what you do for college basketball. And, we started talking about the team. And I went into my Mikal Brown Jr. rant, and he goes, dude, we love Mikal. We love the backcourt. He goes, I think the front court, I don't think people realize how good Ali Khalifa is, how good, Sonata Frew is. And so that to me was the X factor, is the front court just bullied Kentucky. And we're certainly going to get to Kentucky in a minute. I think the last thing, if you're a Louisville fan or if you're Pat Kelsey, that you have to be pretty excited about, I'll tell you, it's the fact that I think all things considered, I don't, listen, I didn't listen to all of Pat Kelsey's comments after the game, so I don't know if he addressed this. If you're Louisville, I don't think you can sit there and say that you played your A++ game for 40 minutes. You did in spurts. You did in moments. You completely controlled the game for stretches. You didn't dominate this game, though, from start to finish. I mean, first of all, look at the game. I mentioned it off the top. A bunch of missed free throws late. They missed 10 free throws overall, and I think about 6 or 7 probably in the final 4 or 5 minutes. So you put up 96. You probably, if you just make a couple late free throws, easily hit 100 and win by double figures. The other thing, we know that Louisville wants to take a lot of threes and make a lot of threes. 13 of 40 from behind the arc. Again, Ryan Conwell is a career 41% three-point shooter. He was pretty much on point the whole game. Isaac McNeely, I think it's kind of worth noting on him. He was like a 42, 43% guy, 3 of 7 last night. And I don't think that he probably feels like he did as much as he normally will for this Louisville Cardinals team. So I just bring it up because great win for Louisville. I think this was, by the way, we talk about the freshman, another national coming out party. This for Mikel Brown Jr. He's special. I've said I think he would. I thought he would be in the Mikel Brown, in the AJ DeBonsa, Cam Boozer, Darren Peterson conversation by the end of the year. Might have to add Caleb Wilson to that list as well because he's been awesome. Koa Pete's been awesome. But my goodness, what a night for the Louisville Cardinals. And, I know we got a lot of Kentucky fans that listen to this show, but I'm happy to see Louisville back. I mean, they are a program that for most of my life has been a top-tier college basketball program. It has not looked that way the last couple years, but you could see Pat Kelsey turning this thing around in real time, and they get the signature win they've been waiting for against the Kentucky Wildcats. Let's switch gears. Because with the thrill of victory with Louisville comes the agony of defeat with Kentucky. I'd be remiss if I didn't talk a little bit about Kentucky because they are on the other side of this game. Louisville wins 96-88. And as I just said a minute ago, I think you can absolutely argue that game actually wasn't really as close as the final score would indicate. An 8-point victory that was a 20-point game with 12 minutes to go. And listen, credit to Kentucky for coming back. Credit to Colin Chandler, Cam Williams, all that. But the counter to that is you did not look good for large stretches. And oh, by the way, on top of it, the defense wasn't good enough. Certain guys appear to be regressing. And I think it continues this trend of, Mark Pope teams just maybe not showing up in some games for this team and for this program. And so let's break it down from the Kentucky side. By the way, if you're a Louisville fan finding this video, we already talked about Louisville. Don't get mad. I'm not giving you credit. Once you hear what I said about Louisville, you're going to love what I had to say. But there is, the negative side of this with Kentucky. And the standards, it simply wasn't good enough. Mark Pope said it after the game. This is not our standard. And I think the first thing that, I don't know if worry is the right word, but I think frustrate to me might be the right word. I just don't think Kentucky really showed up ready to play. I think early on, first 7 or 8 minutes they did, and then they got kind of punched in the mouth, and there was really no response to it, okay? And this, to me, it almost has like a little bit of a Kalen DeBoer after the Florida State game earlier this year in college football, where Kalen DeBoer, year one, couple just total no-shows from the Kalen DeBoer side. It was Vandy last year. It was Oklahoma. It was Michigan in the bowl game. And then you open the season getting punked by Florida State, and it's like, okay, we got a problem here. And I do think there's a little bit of that with Kentucky. You go back to last year, kind of a weird combination of losses at unexpected times with complete no-shows. I would argue the Ohio State game last year in New York City, complete no-show. You lose to Georgia on the road, probably not fully ready to play. You lose also on the road last season. I'm trying to remember some of these games. Listen, you had the Arkansas game at home where Arkansas was 1-5 in league play. You were probably a double-digit favorite. You don't win that game. And so, one, I just don't think when you get punched in the mouth, you respond well enough. And then, two, I do think right now, here in November, there are some big-picture issues with this team. First off, defense just wasn't good enough. Okay, and let me say this because I tweeted this out. If you remember, so Kentucky so far, they play Purdue in the exhibition slate. They then play Georgetown, but they have neither of their guards. I defended the fact that they didn't look good against Georgetown because when you don't have your 2-point guards, that's going to hurt. They don't really have either for the Nichols game, Jalen Lowe or Denzel Aberdeen. Denzel Aberdeen does come off, start the second half and play really well, and you kind of roll away. But after the Nichols game, the offense had struggled, and then they struggled also in the Georgetown exhibition. And so after the game, Mark Pope was like, well, why is the offense struggling so much? Now, I think he should have just said, hey, we don't have our point guard. It's going to look different once we get Jalen Lowe back. But instead, he chose another alternative. He said, quote, we're focused on the defense at practice. And so I tweeted this out. And Matt, if you have that tweet, you could pop it up. Is, when Louisville's running all over the floor and they're putting up 53 points in the first half, my question was, didn't Mark Pope say that they had only been working on defensive practice as of late? And then I went and found the transcript after the Nichols game, which was the opening night of college hoops, or it was technically the second night. It was Kentucky's opening game. And that was how Mark Pope answered the question. The question that he was posed after the Nichols game, it seemed like you guys really struggled to penetrate in the first half. Was there an emphasis in the second half? And he said he led the answer by saying, well, all we do is work on the defensive end at practice right now, so we're going to have to spend a little bit more time on offense. And I remember thinking at the time, one, if that was something John Calipari said 2 years ago, it would be World War III in the comment section and the media, because Cal used to say stuff like that all the time in the early part of the season, and he'd get killed for it. But two, if you were working on defense at practice all week long, and had a funny way of showing it, because as I said, Louisville 53 points in the first half, overall shot 45% from the field. Defense simply isn't good enough. I think the other thing, as far as a negative is concerned, and I do want to get to some positives, it's November 12th today. There's no reason to freak out, because guess what? It's really hard to win on the road. We'll talk about that in a minute. But the other negative is some of your returnees, some of the guys that you were expecting to take a leap, just haven't done it. Now, Otega Owe did not play for 2 months because of an injury. He had a turf toe injury, basically out from like late July till late September. So I want to give him a little bit of a pass, but, just he hasn't been good enough. And by the way, maybe that's just he's not healthy. And if he's not healthy, you don't have to play him 28 minutes, especially when Colin Chandler's playing well, especially when you only play Jasper Johnson 6 minutes. I just think that he's either regressed. He's certainly, the body language doesn't look good. Now, I think the body language may be because he's struggling. I don't think it's a chicken or an egg thing. I think it's a chicken and the egg thing. I think it's the body language stinks because he's not playing well, and he's not playing well. And the point is, he's not right. And if it's the injury, if it's the attitude, if it's too much NIL, I don't know what it is. I am going to default to he's not at 100%. But if he's not at 100%, you're not obligated to play him 28 minutes. But he isn't good enough. Again, not to compare everything to Arkansas, but I heard a lot of Kentucky fans chirping about Carter Knox the other night. Well, Otega Owe struggling as well. The other thing that I would say about Kentucky, and listen, I feel less guilty saying this about college athletes now. Brandon Garrison just isn't good enough. McDonald's All-American a couple years ago, played at Oklahoma State, transfers to Kentucky, played behind Amari Williams last year. This is supposed to be the year that he's making the leap, that he is a serviceable center in the SEC. And I think maybe the first sign that the Kentucky staff wasn't sold on him being that was the fact that they signed Jaden Quaytons in the offseason. And so Brandon Garrison just isn't good enough right now. Like I said, he got punked by Sonata Frew. I don't really see the effort there. I'm not like a big, whatever. I don't criticize effort. I don't know what's going on. But I will tell you this. Listen, in this NIL world, you either got to perform or you got to get out of the way. If I'm Mark Pope, I'm thinking about starting Malachi Moreno next game, because Malachi Moreno is bringing it and at least playing hard. I don't know if Brandon Garrison is doing that. And I also think just in this world, you can't feel guilty about sitting guys on the bench. You're getting paid a lot of money. Figure it the you-know-what out. And so I think those are some of the frustrating things for Kentucky. I think it'll be interesting. Pope has historically, his best teams at BYU played a lot of guys. I still think he will, but I think he's got to figure out some rotations. I will say, I think he's got to start Jalen Lowe. I understand he was injured to begin the year. You want to ease him into the lineup. No. This is your highly paid transfer point guard. Put him in your starting lineup. And certainly with the shoulder, I do hope he gets better. If we want to be positive about Kentucky, because one, I think it's really hard to win on the road. Listen, Kansas lost at North Carolina. Arkansas lost at Michigan State. It's not easy to go on the road this early in the year and beat good teams, right? And so I'm not that worried big picture. I do think there are some things that need to get figured out. I do think the defense simply has to be better. I do think part of it is, you need Jaden Quaintance back. Now, what you can expect from him when he comes back off of ACL surgery, that I cannot answer. I don't think anybody's going to know, including Jaden Quaintance, until it actually happens. But it doesn't change the fact that, in my opinion, the defensive effort needs to get better. You got to figure out what's going on with Otega Oweh. But if we're looking at positives, opportunity, when guys are struggling, it creates opportunities for others. And other guys certainly stepped up on Monday night. Colin Chandler, I'll give myself a little bit of a pat on the back. I remember the first exhibition game Kentucky played last year. I want to say it was like maybe, I don't know. I can't remember who. But Colin Chandler comes out, and I'm like, oh, that's an NBA player. Now, he might be a 22-year-old fourth-year college player, NBA player, but that's an NBA player right there. So I thought he looked very good. Cam Williams came off the bench and provided you a little bit of a spark. I still really like what Malachi Moreno brings. And I'll be honest, I think Andrea Jelovic is another one too. Now, I understand he's not the most athletic guy, and that was a hyper-athletic game. But I don't know. Let me put it this way. I did not love the rotations. I thought there was a moment in time where I'm like, why is Colin Chandler not playing? I know he's in foul trouble, but get him in more. And again, I've said my Malachi Moreno spiel, and I've said my Jalen Lowe spiel. I think the starting lineup, go with the guys that are going to be starters. Jalen Lowe, Denzel Aberdeen, Otega Oweh, Mo Diabate, and I would put in Malachi Moreno. And then you just got to weather the storm until Jaden Quaintance gets back and you have some semblance of a full team. Good thing for Kentucky, you get a couple, you get a game to get it right against Eastern Illinois. Then you got Michigan State. Then you really got a little bit of a stretch before it gets really crazy. December is going to be insane. UNC at home, St. John's on a neutral, Gonzaga on a neutral, Indiana on a neutral. So, Michigan State now becomes a little bit more of a must win. But, I don't want to overreact to everything. But I also just, we got to call a spade, and that performance was not very impressive. All right, I'll tell you what, I went way longer on Louisville, Kentucky than I thought. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to take a quick break. We'll come back. We'll talk about the rest of a busy night in college hoops. We'll get to some of your questions. Then we'll do some college football. Playoff rankings are out. Auburn may have its coach in waiting. Quick break. Be right back. All right, we're going to get back to the show in a minute. But before we do, I have so many people that reach out and say, Torres, you give me hours and hours and hours of free content every day, every month, every year. What can I do to help support the show? Well, you want to support the show and look good in the process. Make sure to check out and support the Aaron Torres Media merch store at aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. Some of you wondering, what can I get in that merch store, Torres? Well, Kentucky fans, we got our Mark Pope Hope and Pope t-shirts. That is right. Mark Pope, monster first year. Year 2 is going to be even better. Get your Hope and Pope t-shirt at aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. Arkansas fans, the Big Pig Invasion is coming. It is here. John Calipari has things rocking. Get your Big Pig Invasion tees. Again, aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. St. John's fans, we have our Big Rick Energy t-shirts. And if you're just a college basketball fan in general, guess what? Your March is for Day Drinking shirt. That is the shirt that you need year-round, but especially for the next NCAA tournament. You can order yours now. By the way, football fans, we got you covered too. Nebraska fans, new era, new rules, the t-shirt that you need before the start of this coming season. And oh, by the way, if you're a Colorado fan, if you're just a Coach Prime fan, we have our Dion shirts and hats, more of them than we know what to do with. So to check out the full line of Aaron Torres Media merch and also support the show, good news is we're going to have even more for the fall. Check out the Aaron Torres Media merch store at aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. And for more information, you can always reach out at Aaron Torres Podcast Questions at gmail.com. All right, everybody. I'm back. Good to be back. Matt, if we have any questions, we'll get to them in just a minute. Before we do get to those questions, though, you know what I got to do. I got to thank our friends I got to thank our hotel and casino partner. I got to thank Circa Sportsbook and Circa Casino. Okay, so listen, I'm going to be in Vegas 2 weeks from now for the Players Era Tournament. Awesome event. Really excited. When I go, I'm going to be doing live shows from Stadium Swim at Circa. And Circa, if you're going to be in Vegas for any of the college hoops over the next couple weeks, best place to hang out, best place to watch games, best place to bet, best place to whatever. But here is the really cool part. Circa has opened up a new sports book at Mint Kentucky Downs in Franklin, Kentucky. So if you can't get to Vegas, but you want to watch the Cardinals, you want to watch the Cats, you want to watch the Hilltoppers, or by the way, the Tennessee Vols, the Memphis Tigers, because remember, it's right on that Tennessee-Kentucky border, you got to go to Circa Sportsbook at Mint Kentucky Downs. All the same hospitality as the place out in Vegas. Great sportsbook, great customer service. And in this YouTube TV world that we live in where you can't watch games, guess what? You don't have to worry about YouTube TV or this or that. All you got to do, Circa Sportsbook, Circa Sportsbook, Mint Kentucky Downs. If you cannot get to Circa Sportsbook in Circa Casino in Vegas, love Circa. Thank you for their support. By the way, Kentucky was 17-1 to win the national championship yesterday. Maybe those numbers have gone down. Download the Circa Sportsbook app or go to Mint Kentucky Downs. You can get Kentucky for probably, 20-1, 25-1 to win it all. Take advantage while you can. Louisville fans, by the way, I think you were 22-1. That number probably dropped a little bit. All right, I want to get some other college hoops really quickly. Matt, it looks like you got a few pinned tweets, or I don't know why I say tweets, pinned comments. Matt, give me a pinned comment or two. We'll get to the rest of them. Car Guy 1612 says, go CARDS, cards. Hey, deserve it, man. It's Victory Wednesday. Great win for the Cards. They might mess around and win the ACC. By the way, when I get down to Mint Kentucky Downs, I may have to swing through Louisville and Lexington because I'm into Louisville in a minute. May have to see some people down in Louisville. Anyway, thank you for that. All right. Ethan, Kentucky had 21 team fouls in the first half, 15 for Louisville. That's what killed us. And threes from Louisville. We got to defend the three, hit the damn free throws, and quit fouling, and we get better. Ethan, you're not wrong, man. Listen, I'm sure there are people that are over. Listen, I didn't overreact when he lost to Georgetown. I didn't overreact when he looked ugly against Nichols. You got to get something close to your full roster back. Now, I think JQ might be a little bit more of a work in progress, but nobody anticipated not having Jalen Lowe for 2 weeks. And if you don't have Jalen Lowe, that changes everything. So, yes, it has to be better. And I think to your point, Ethan, the defense has to be better. You know, my whole thing, I remember when I was at Circa Sportsbook last week and I was doing the show, I gave my Final Four picks. And I basically said, like, I think that, I kind of think, I have Kentucky in my Final Four in the preseason. And people said Pope never puts out good defenses. And I said he's never had the athletes that he has this year. Well, there's no excuse. Listen, I'll just say this, and everybody knows this. We know about the, the reported $22 million payroll, but I don't think the Lexington Herald Leader puts it out there if it's not true. Well, guess what? There's no excuse this year. Last year, you're putting together a roster on the fly, but he purposely and actively wanted to get more athletic to help on the defensive end. Well, you got to do it. And I think, like I said, if guys aren't performing, you can't play them. Brandon Garrison is not earning his minutes right now. Otega Owe, if he's hurt, you're not obligated to play him 28 minutes. So great comment from Ethan. Another question or two, then we'll get to the rest of college hoops. Big A says, as a Hogs fan, I would celebrate Kentucky's loss, but we lost to Michigan State. Well, listen, I try to stay out of the Kentucky-Arkansas stuff as much as I can. But, I saw all these people, Cal, look at Cal's offense late against Michigan State. The counter to that is they were up at the half at Michigan State, and they were in position to tie the game with under a minute to go. Wasn't the case for Kentucky. It's hard to win on the road. That's why go back to the Sunday show. I didn't crush Cal. I said I was disappointed in the defensive effort and the effort on the glass and with the rebounding, but I didn't crush Cal because I said it's hard to win on the road. And hopefully Arkansas fans understand that now, but hopefully Kentucky fans understand that right now because it's just like, I don't know. Yeah. Thank you for the comment, Big A. We'll get to one more. Luke says, still think Kentucky has an excellent team. Sucks to lose to your rival, but it's college basketball. Road games are hard. One loss does not derail your season. Luke with some perspective. By the way, we appreciate Luke. We appreciate all of our listeners. Luke, by the way, is a member of the channel. Luke, do me a favor. Email me, Aaron Torres, podcastquestions@gmail.com. Got something special for you. We'll take care of you, Luke. By the way, if you want to become a member, $4.99 a month, help support the show. We're going to be going on the road. We're going to be doing a lot of different things. Become a member today. We appreciate Luke's support, and we appreciate all of you who have signed up. Really quickly, I just want to rip through a couple other things in college hoops from Tuesday night. It was Tuesday. My days are all screwed up. Usually we record on Tuesday morning, so I talk a lot about Monday night. I'm just going to rip through about 4 or 5 scores, a couple minutes on each. I'm not going to spend a ton of time. The first one that actually jumped out to me, maybe not the biggest game on the schedule outside Kentucky, Louisville, but it was the one that followed them. Gonzaga hosting Creighton. Gonzaga, a 90-63 win in this game. Really interesting. Kind of the inverse of, well, sort of similar to Louisville, Kentucky. Gonzaga, it was a 6-point lead at the half. Gonzaga outscores Creighton by 21 points in the second half to pull away to win. Okay, so let me just be totally transparent. I've been a little critical of Gonzaga in the post Tommy Lloyd era. What does that mean? Tommy Lloyd is the Arizona head coach, and it felt like all of those really elite Gonzaga teams were built when Tommy Lloyd was the lead assistant at Gonzaga, okay? He leaves Arizona the year after they make the title game against Baylor in 2021. 2022, they have Chet Holmgren, who, he helped recruit. I'm not saying he's the only one. And then after that, they've been good, but they haven't been that kind of like Gonzaga really type program, okay? And so I bring it up because with Gonzaga, I think that the talent level has fallen off the last couple of years. I think that what I saw not only on Tuesday night, getting my days all screwed up, on Tuesday night, but also on Saturday against Oklahoma, I think this might be the best team that they've had since 2022 when they were the number 1 overall seed with Chet Holmgren. What stands out to me, Graham Ike is a star. He's back for another season. They have more depth than Gonzaga basically ever has. Mark Few is famously a guy that likes to play 7 guys. That's it. He plays his starters till there's 20 seconds left and then empties the bench. And when I watch Gonzaga, what I see is about maybe not like a first-team All-American type superstar, but I see about 9 guys that on any given night can really beat you and take advantage of you. So Graham Ike was the best player on the floor Monday night, finished that game with 20 points to go along with, on top of the 20 points, 10 rebounds. But Braden Huff has come along very nicely. The freshmen, we talked about the international freshmen or the international players coming in, the Sonata Frus, the Andrea Yeloviches, the Luka Bogoviches, Mario Saint-Supri, who is from Spain. Got a little bit like, what he almost reminds me of? He's like a better version of Kirk Kriisa. He's got a little bit of a-hole to him, 13 points, 4 rebounds, 3 assists, 3 steals. There was kind of a play where he got caught up under the basket underneath, and he was kind of instigating, but he was kind of not instigating. It was really fun. But you look at Gonzaga, and it's just the depth of guys that they have that on any given night can beat you. Jalen Warley's a transfer from Virginia. Really like him. Tyon Grant Foster, who of course was the player who almost wasn't cleared, then was cleared. That's a dude that averaged 20 a game last year at Grand Canyon, excuse me. And so when I look at this Gonzaga team, I just think it's deeper than it's been, led by Graham Ike. And I do think, listen, I think most of our preseason projections have largely been accurate. Gonzaga might just be a team that I missed on. I think I had them in the 20 to 25 range. That looks like about a top 10 to 12 team to me. Give Gonzaga credit. They get the win. I think this is their deepest, most talented team that I have seen personally from Gonzaga since that 2022 team. I actually think it's probably a little bit deeper. Doesn't have a Drew Timme or a Chet Holmgren, but it is darn good. All right, let's keep it going. A couple other results from Tuesday night. Got that right. Top 15 matchup, Champaign, Illinois. I'll be real. That is a bucket list hoops venue to me. That's a place that I have never been. I've been fortunate. I've been to most of the big ones at this point. Fog Allen, Rupp Arena, Bud Walton, McHale in Tucson, Pauley Pavilion. I have not been to, I think it's State Farm Arena in Champaign. awesome game, awesome energy. The one thing I will say I'm happy about this game, Texas Tech had a lot of injuries early. I don't know that they're close to 100% health-wise, but at least their best players were on the court. But the story on Tuesday night was Illinois getting the win over the Texas Tech Red Raiders. Illinois with the victory, final score in that one, 81-77. Story here, Andrei Stojakovic. So if you remember in portal season, he was one of the last players to enter the portal. Him and PJ Haggerty, I remember entering right at the end, right at the deadline, right? And so I bring it up because I remember when he entered, I said that you go back to his stats last year at Cal, he averaged last season 18 points, but didn't really have very many assists, didn't shoot the ball well. And I said, I actually think there's another level for them to get to, or I think there's another level for him to get to as a player, okay? So I bring it up because last night, 23 points, he looked phenomenal in that game. And this is another guy. You know, we talk about Jalen Lowe and guys that were out with injuries. He was out for most of the preseason with an injury. He looks awesome in this game. As Matt has noted on the ticker, he also had essentially the game-winning block to seal the victory. Illinois, you know, I think it's interesting. They've really pivoted hard to the international players. By the way, you know who played very well for them? Big Z. Remember Big Z? Remember him from Kentucky? Remember him from Arkansas? I turned on the game and Big Z had a block, ran the other way, and had a dunk on the other end. His brother did not play in this game, but Big Z did. 11 points, 7 rebounds, 3 blocks for Big Z. I talked to somebody around Illinois basketball over the last couple weeks. They said he's thriving there. He's loving playing with his brother. I felt bad the way that it ended for him at Arkansas. I understood why Arkansas felt like they had to move on from him with the way in which, you know, he struggled down the stretch for that team. But he looks bigger. He looks stronger. Big Z is even bigger than he was before. Illinois gets the win over Texas Tech. Great game, great environment for Texas Tech. You can see it on the screen. JT Toppin, last year's Big 12 Player of the Year, with 35 points and 11 rebounds. Yeah, that guy's going to be just fine. I do, you know, we'll see how the offense progresses. Christian Anderson, who, you know, I've questioned kind of that point guard in him. Is he more of a point guard or a playmaker? Does have 11 assists. I think in a lot of ways it's a positive for Texas Tech is you go on the road to a crazy environment and it's still a 4-point game. Staying in the Big Ten, let's get to Michigan. You know, technically hosting Wake Forest. The game was in Detroit. Michigan wins in overtime 85-84. So a couple things stand out about this game. One, Michigan got those 3. So first of all, close game, back and forth, whatever. You know, I worry a little bit about Michigan's guards. Is Elliot Cadeau good enough? I think he is probably better than we remember at North Carolina. But when you're going up, you know, Michigan has Final Four aspirations. When you're playing a Darren Peterson, when you're playing a Mikael Brown Jr., when you're playing a whoever, Rob Wright at BYU, Silas Demery at UConn, like, are you going to have a difference maker, a point guard? But what's interesting to me about Michigan is they got the 3 really big name players out of the portal. Yaxel Lendenberg from UAB, Morez Johnson Jr. from Illinois, and Adai Mara from UCLA. And I kind of wondered, how are they going to play those 3? Are they going to play them all together? Well, first of all 3 started. The funny thing about this game, though, Adai Mara was the absolute star of this game. And you're probably sitting there saying, what's funny about that? Well, what's funny about that is UCLA fans, they got to be pulling their freaking hair out right now, okay? So this kid was at UCLA for 2 years, and Mick Cronin just would not play him. And, like, Mick Cronin's a great coach, whatever. But the one thing about Mick Cronin is, I just know this. If he thinks you're soft, he has no time for you, okay? And not everybody is going to be 6'6", throwing elbows, you know, trying to fight you in the parking lot, okay? And so Adai Mara, every time he played last year, he was a total difference maker. I remember I believe it was the opening round of the NCAA tournament last year. They played Utah State. He had like 12 points, 8 boards, and 2 blocks or something like that. I can't remember all the details now. But I bring it up because Dusty May was like, yeah, I'll take the 7'3" guy that can do a little bit of everything. And he was the best player on the floor on Monday night. 18 points, 13 rebounds, 6 assists, 5 blocks. This was a guy that Mick Cronin could not figure out how to use. So, like, listen, not here to criticize Mick Cronin and tear him down. I'm just here to say, like, you couldn't find a role for this guy, Mick Cronin. Like, I don't know. Michigan gets the win. Michigan, they actually play at TCU on Friday if you're looking for a game to watch. Actually, speaking of UCLA, they play Arizona on Friday night in LA. I might actually go to that game. But Michigan gets the win in overtime. It was close. With Wake Forest, I'm kind of at the point where, I'm done with moral victories. Steve Forbes is in year 5, year 6. They've been on the bubble every year. You got to make a tournament. Like, this certainly would have helped. I don't really care what you do in November. Are you going to win the games in ACC play that you need to make the tournament? Remember, a few years ago, they beat Duke in that famous court storming game with Kyle Filipowski, and they were like in the tournament. And then they lost like 4 or 5, whatever. So with Wake Forest, you just got to win games that matter. They don't get the win. Good showing. I need to see it to believe it with Wake Forest. Couple more results from Monday night. Tuesday night. My death will be not remembering what night I watch what sporting events. Okay. Florida State. Florida State ends up winning. Ends up winning this game. Final score in this one, I believe, was 78-76. Listen, I'm only bringing this up because I try to tell people about Florida. I liked Florida in the preseason. But I thought let me put it this way. I thought it was so, I heard people, they're a definitive top 3 team. The top 3 is Purdue and Houston and Florida in some order. And I was like, are we watching the same sport here? I like Florida. I did, but there were a couple things. I said, first of all, they have no wings. Tommy Hawk is maybe their best player. And he played at his best when he was at the 4 last year alongside Alex Condon. Well, now all offseason, I was kind of sold. Well, he's actually a 3, Condon's a 4, and we're going to play Chinyelu at the 5. That's fine. I don't care. Do whatever you want. But don't sell me that every analytics says you're best playing him at the 4, and now you're going to play him at the 3. I don't care. I'm just saying. The other thing is, with the guards, listen, I like Boogie Fland. I've actually defended Boogie Fland. Xavier Lee, I was a little bit more questionable on. But the counter to that is that we also, in the process of getting to the point where people said, Florida's a top 3 team, was I the only one that acknowledged that all 3 of their guards last year were all drafted? Not only Walter Clayton, Will Richard is averaging 10 points per game so far in his NBA career. He's averaging double figures as an NBA player. Elijah Martin was drafted off of last year's team. And so this notion that you were just going to replace these guys, I never bought it. And so if you remember, we shared the tweet last week when they lost to Arizona. I said the day the AP poll came out, I said, I like them. I don't see them as the number 3 team in the country. They struggle to beat Florida State at home. It'll be interesting. They play Miami on a neutral court this weekend. I don't think that's a gimme. They also go to the event out in San Diego in a couple weeks over Thanksgiving. The Thanksgiving holiday. Purdue is in that event as well, so we'll see what happens there. And then, by the way, let's not forget, they play Duke and UConn in back-to-back games in December. Remember, they're going to Duke, and then they got UConn in New York City, which is basically a road venue. So we will see what happens from there. Last game. Speaking of the beautiful state of Connecticut, you might not know that logo right there. I got to give shout out to my Central Connecticut Blue Devils who went to BC. I know, BC on a Tuesday ain't exactly, Cameron crazies for Duke and Carolina. But I got to give a shout out to my Central Connecticut Blue Devils. They beat Boston College 60-59. Great story. Central Connecticut, listen, this is no disrespect, but D1 program forever. But I mean, it's a tough place to win. Patrick Sellers, former Jim Calhoun assistant, has been there for a few years. They've made the conference championship game in back-to-back years. Can't quite get over the hump. They go to Boston College and get the win. Just want to give my Blue Devils a little bit of a shout out. It's a tough place to win. And that guy could have been in the tournament the last 2 years. They beat Boston College. By the way, my nephew went to Central Connecticut for several years in beautiful New Britain, Connecticut. Hard-hitting New Britain is what they call it. George Springer is from New Britain, fun fact. So they get the win. Boston College, to the degree that they have fans, tough time to be an Eagles fan. I grew up in a different world where they were pretty good in basketball, pretty good in football. When I was in college, Matt Ryan was the quarterback of the football team. So they were pretty good. Jared Dudley led them to a Big East regular season title. Well, Bill O'Brien is yelling at reporters, and Earl Grant, he should have never been hired. I mean, he just shouldn't have been hired. What a disaster. By the way, fun fact, I'm not, you know what, because I'm a man of the people. I am nominating myself for the Boston College AD job because there's no reason that program should be that bad. I promise you, I will get you a better coach than Earl Grant. We'll win some games. I don't even know how to raise money for fundraising, but we'll do it. By the way, I would have hired Pitino a few years ago. I would have hired Pitino when he was at Iona. But I bring it up because I think I should be the next Boston College AD. In the meantime, give Central Connecticut a credit for a win. Couple other things, Matt, I forgot to mention these to you, so I apologize. First of all, I just want to give a shout out to John Shire. Duke played at Army on Tuesday night, which was, of course, Veterans Day. Coach K, of course, was there. Coach K coached at Army, was a military serviceman. I just thought that was a really cool moment in time. So I just want to get, I said this with the Final Four last year, is that being around Shire for about 4 or 5 days, I know we're not supposed to like Duke. Shire is a very hard guy not to like. Okay, I noticed at the podium, every time he was asked a question about the team success, Shire would always defer, we got my staff is unbelievable. Last year, remember, Cooper Flagg's mom was around a lot, and, we have the best parents in the world. I couldn't do it without him. I love my player. I call him the anti-JJ Redick because JJ Redick's just kind of a jerk. He's mean to the media. And John Shire is the exact opposite, just humble, just gives credit to everybody else. And for them to play at Army on Veterans Day, I thought that was really cool. By the way, BYU smacked Delaware. It was close early. They pulled away late. BYU plays UConn on Saturday. We'll probably preview that game on tomorrow's show. But I'm very excited for that game. I think BYU's starting to figure it out. Richie Saunders, his best game. And that's your Tuesday night in college hoops. All right, we're going to come back. We'll do 2 quick football stories. The CFP rankings are out. We'll talk a little bit about that. Matt, certainly if there's more questions, let me know. And then also Auburn. Looks like they may know who their next head coach is. We'll take a quick break. Be right back. All right, we're going to get back to the show in a minute. But before we do, you know what we got to do. We got to thank our friends. We got to thank our partners. We got to go ahead and thank Caulipuffs and Caulipuffs.com. Yeah, you see the logo on the back of the screen right here. Okay, so I've told you all about Caulipuffs, but family-owned company, not far from where I live. Joey, a huge sports fan. And one day he was sitting on the couch and he said, you know what? I need a snack that is both healthy but delicious, something my kids are going to love, something my family's going to love, something I'm going to love. And so he came up with Caulipuffs. This is the new age health food snack. You don't need to go to the grocery aisle and buy all that crap, the Doritos, the Fritos. No, my friends, you need Caulipuffs. Baked, not fried, avocado oil, no grease, healthy ingredients. But here's the best part. They taste freaking delicious. Actually, there's another best part. In addition to tasting delicious, in addition to being healthy, they are also taking care of listeners of the Aaron Torres pod. Okay, so check this out. All you got to do is go to Caulipuffs.com. That's Caulipuffs.com, Caulipuffs.com, and you can get 15% off any purchase with the promo code Torres. That's Torres, Torres. It's that simple. 15% off any purchase. 1 bag to try them out, 100 bags to cater a party. Doesn't really matter. Promo code Torres. Caulipuffs.com gets you 15% off. Caulipuffs also available on Amazon. You obviously can't get the promo code there, but Caulipuffs.com, promo code Torres gets you 15% off any purchase. Thank you to our friends at Caulipuffs. All right, everybody. I am back. Good to be back. I do want to do some CFP stuff in a second. Luke, though, did bring up something that I think is interesting. I mentioned Boston College losing to Central Connecticut. He says Boston College is a power conference team by association only. They aren't serious about investing or being competitive in any sport. When the ACC collapses, they will have no lifeboat outside of G6. So really quickly, I only bring this up because this is my big bull. By the way, we still haven't talked about the Big Ten private equity thing. The Big Ten private equity thing is 100% being pushed by these broke schools that know that if they don't get an infusion of cash, they have no chance to compete. I think UCLA is at the top of the list, but once you get past UCLA, you know who benefits from an infusion of cash? There's a reason. Let me put it this way. There's a reason Michigan State and USC are the biggest opponents of it. They don't need the money. Rutgers does, Maryland does, etc. And so with Boston College, with this comment about Boston College, I've said consistently, I think the next wave of realignment, if, we might not get one because with the way the Big Ten is going with this private equity thing, but, I think the next wave of realignment isn't additions, isn't expansion. I think it's contraction. I've said, for a couple of years now, why is Ohio State subsidizing Rutgers? Vandy has stepped its game up, but, why is Alabama subsidizing Vandy? And so I think Boston College, there's a lot of schools in the ACC right now. And I think the ACC, actually, if the ACC was serious about, being a power conference team, I don't think you can because of the grant of rights. I'd start booting teams. Boston College, you're sucking on the teat, if you will. I was going to say sucking on the you-know-what, but I don't know if you would have known what. But I think Boston College is sucking on the teat of Clemson. Same with Pitt. Same with Stanford and Cal. That was one of the worst realignment moves I've ever seen. Luke is 100% right. Boston College, Power 5 in name only, Power 4 in name only. Yeah, I don't know what else there is to say. I think the ACC really, if they were smart, really I think should contract, if we're being honest. They should have never brought in the West Coast schools. And I think Boston College, Syracuse right now, Pitt, these teams are bringing nothing to the table. All right. You know what is bringing something to the table? College football playoff rankings. By the way, thank you again to our partners, Caulipuffs. I should mention, I talked to our Caulipuffs rep. Promo code Torres is a hit. 15% off any purchase. He told me the numbers. He actually told me how many conversions we've gotten. If you want a little snack for the holidays, Caulipuffs.com, promo code Torres gets you 15% off. Listen, you're going to need a snack around those Thanksgiving tables. Take advantage of that opportunity today. Caulipuffs.com, promo code Torres. But thank you for those of you who have taken advantage of the opportunity. All right, let's switch gears. College football playoff rankings. All right, so here's the deal listen, I know, listen, first of all, I've been doing this a long time, okay? I'm a vet in the game, in the content game. But I bring it up because I know that any rankings of any magnitude are always going to catch people's attention, okay? So I totally get how putting out rankings helps and creates controversy and creates whatever. I will just be totally transparent. It is super hard for me to get super fired up about these rankings because ultimately we understand that the only ranking that really matters is the final one, and that basically they're not going to make any drastic moves in these rankings based on a week-to-week basis. And so you look at this week, I'll give you the top 10 really quick. Ohio State stays at number 1. Indiana stays at number 2. Texas A&M stays at number 3. Alabama and Georgia stay at 4 and 5. Texas Tech does move up to 6 thanks to the top 10 win. Ole Miss drops a spot only because they played the Citadel. Oregon moves up to 8. Notre Dame 9, Texas 10, Oklahoma 11. So basically Oregon, Notre Dame, Texas, and Oklahoma all move up a spot. BYU falls from number 7 to number 12, and that's only because they lost to Texas Tech, but they're ahead of Utah, who they've already beaten. So, listen, I know there's a lot of college football shows, and I'm not criticizing, but they'll do a huge rankings reaction, and, listen, Josh Pate is great at what he does. The On3 guys are great at what they do. They're going to do a big, bold thing. I can't get too fired up about these rankings just because it's exactly what we expect, okay? But there are a couple takeaways that I do want to just spend a minute discussing. And I hope that didn't sound like it was criticizing. I just can't get fired up about 7 versus 10. But let's actually start there, 3 versus 2, because I will say it felt like the big debate coming into this week. Ohio State was number 1 in the first playoff ranking. Indiana was 2. Texas A&M was 3. Well, off of the incredible Indiana rally, highlighted by the incredible Fernando Mendoza throw to the incredible Omar Cooper with the incredible Gus Johnson call, conversely, with the Texas A&M beatdown of Missouri, it felt like there was this really big push publicly. Texas A&M has to be number 2. Indiana barely beat a lousy Penn State team on the road. How is Texas A&M going to be anything but number 2 coming into this week, okay? So it feels like that was the big artificially created debate. I don't care. Indiana stays at 2. And I'm not saying that I don't care, because I don't want you to, if I don't care, then I think it's a bad precedent for this show saying I don't care. So I do care. I just think that it's a made up fake controversy. Okay. So it felt like, to me, this wasn't actually a real controversy. It felt like, one, we all know ESPN owns the SEC, basically, for lack of a better term. They're essentially in bed with each other. That's fine. I don't really care. But ESPN has the rankings show. ESPN is in bed with the SEC, and it just felt like this was going to be the artificial, made-up debate by the Peter Burnses, the Paul Feinbaums, the guys that anything the Big Ten does is terrible, anything the SEC does is awesome, and I'll just be real. I don't really care. Matt, did I send you my Indiana tweet? I can't remember. If I didn't, it's on me, whatever. I don't care. So I don't think I sent it, but basically I said this, is that, if Texas A&M had been above Indiana, I would have had no problem. But Indiana being ahead of Texas A&M, it is such a lame SEC. The SEC is amazing. Give us all of our credit. I just thought it was a crappy argument, a crappy debate, whatever. And here's the counter to the debate, right? So the whole debate stems on this notion of, well, Indiana, they barely beat Penn State at home, and Penn State fired their coach, and Penn State stinks. Well, guess what? I don't know that Texas A&M has the strongest leg to stand on that conversation, okay? Because if your argument is Indiana just beat a team who's fired their coach, they barely won, okay, that's fine. Here's the issue with Texas A&M. Currently 9-0, going for their first 10-win season since 1992. Here's the issue. They've played 6 SEC games so far. Of their 6 SEC wins, 4 of them have come to teams who have since fired their coach, or their coach had been fired when they played them. They had a 3-point win over Arkansas after Arkansas fired Sam Pittman, a 6-point win over Auburn when Auburn had Hugh Freeze. Oh, by the way, on top of that, you did beat LSU when Brian Kelly was there, but Brian Kelly got fired. You beat Florida when Florida had Billy Napier, but Billy Napier got fired. I don't know that Texas A&M is the team to stand on the Indiana just beat a team that fired their coach. They stink. Well, then what's your excuse, Texas A&M, for only winning by 3 at Arkansas? Well, you know what my argument would be? I actually think Arkansas is pretty tough, but I can't not say that Penn State isn't tough at home either. Penn State has a 100,000-seat stadium. Penn State has NFL dudes all over their defense. And so this notion that we have to drop Indiana, okay, well, then let's drop Texas A&M because they only beat Auburn by 6 when they were playing Auburn at home. Like that's the funny part, right? The argument is, well, they barely beat a team that's already fired their coach on the road. Okay, well, you barely beat a team that fired their coach at home. And I know they had Hugh Freeze at the time, but guess what? Auburn might be better without Hugh Freeze. So I just bring it up because, to me, this turned into like the fake artificial debate that the ESPN wanted you to be fired up about because they need something to talk about. I just don't see it. If Texas A&M had been number 2, that's fine. If Indiana had been number 2, that's fine. But let's stop pretending like Texas A&M's resume is unimpeachable. Like, if we're being honest, we've been told by the committee that wins and losses solely don't matter. Alabama's got a better resume than both of them. And oh, by the way, like, I would argue of the 3 best wins that Indiana and Texas A&M have combined, 2 of them are from Indiana, at Oregon, at Iowa. Now, Texas A&M did win at Notre Dame, so let's give them credit. But this was just one, like, people wanted to get fired up about. I just couldn't get mad one way or the other. The one thing that I do think made me a little mad, the highest ranked ACC team. So Virginia lost this weekend. Louisville lost this weekend. The highest ranked ACC team is now Miami at number 15 with Georgia Tech coming in at 16. Okay. So this to me is just stupid. And let me explain why. I understand the notion of ranking Miami ahead of Georgia Tech because Miami has the best win of any ACC team, which is obviously against Notre Dame at home to open the season. But here becomes the issue with putting Miami in that spot is that now, like when ESPN puts up all their graphics of, this is what the playoff would look like if it started today and whatever, guess what? All of those graphics now have Miami in that ranking. This is why it's stupid. Miami is not getting into the college football playoff unless two things happen. One, they win out and there's absolute carnage everywhere. Like I'm talking like Ole Miss losing twice. I'm talking Georgia losing twice. I'm talking BYU playing itself out of the playoff picture, whatever. We're not getting two ACC teams. But the bigger issue becomes that Miami right now does not have a pathway to the ACC championship game. So if you look at Miami right now, they're 7-2 overall, 3-2 in the ACC. There are currently, let's do the math here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 teams in the ACC with one loss in the ACC standings. Louisville has 2 losses, but Louisville has a head-to-head win over Miami. So it would take absolute carnage in the ACC for Miami to make the ACC championship game. So if they don't make the ACC championship game, and that's their only pathway to the playoff, you shouldn't have them in a position where they're even in the bracket as the ACC representative. It's more stupid than anything, but just flip-flop. Just put Georgia Tech one spot ahead and say, look, Georgia Tech, if they win out, is playing for the ACC title. So I just thought it was a weird thing to do. I thought it was kind of a dumb thing to do, if we're being perfectly honest. But that was probably actually my biggest gripe. Why is Miami in the ACC spot in this playoff bracket? Because they have no pathway to the actual college football playoff unless crazy stuff happens. I will say this: there is one interesting thing, and I think they were looking for stuff to talk about on the selection show. Heather Dinich did bring up an interesting point, though, is that she mentioned that right now South Florida is the Group of 5 representative. South Florida, by the way, there's not much to talk about when we're talking about Group of 5 representatives, okay? But South Florida is the Group of 5 representative. They came in at number 24, the only Group of 5 team in the rankings. Now, first of all, I think there should be more Group of 5 teams in. Tulane, remember, has beaten Duke, has beaten Northwestern. That's a team that you could easily argue should be in the rankings. But South Florida right now in representing the American. And then Heather Dinich brought up a point, and generally, I'm not going to lie, I don't think Heather Dinich is maybe like the best analyst, but that's neither here nor there. I bring it up because she brought up an interesting point. James Madison is currently 8-1, 6-0 in the Sun Belt. And her point was this, is if you put James Madison in, at some point, there is a possibility that if they win out, and if South Florida wins out, and that if there's carnage in the ACC, that we could potentially have 2 Group of 5 teams and 0 ACC teams. And I don't think it's going to happen. I do think it's kind of an interesting point, though. Okay, so for people who don't remember the bylaws of the college football playoff rankings, it is the 5 highest ranked Group of 5, or the 5 highest ranked conference champions get an automatic bid. We always default to the fact that we assume there are going to be 4 power conference teams taking those 5 spots. So it's the 5 highest ranked conference champions. And I think even in game broadcasts, it's been maybe misrepresented as that there is a Group of 5 representative. No. It's the 5 highest ranked conference champions. So in theory, it could be the SEC, the Big 12, the Big 10 has no champion in, which I know would never happen, but like no champion, the ACC has no champion, and 3 Group of 5 teams could get that bid. I don't know if it's getting confusing, but it's 5 auto bids to the 5 highest ranked conference champions. And we always assume that 4 of those spots are going to go to the SEC, the Big 10, the Big 12, and the ACC. And that's just not necessarily the case. And so that's where it becomes especially interesting to me, is if we have some chaos at the top of the ACC, where right now we have, like I said, a bunch of flawed teams at the top. But listen, I mean, right now I mentioned there's 5 teams that all have 1 loss in the ACC in the standings, okay? Here's the issue. SMU is 7-3. Duke is 5-4 coming off the loss at UConn, UConn. If some of those teams get to an ACC championship or win the ACC, there's no guarantee that they're going to be ranked ahead of the other Group of 5 teams. So I just bring it up because James Madison right there is an interesting team to watch. They are currently, as I said, they are currently sitting at 9-1 overall. Now, the issue with them, their one loss was at Louisville. And so because of that, I think it becomes an interesting question of just what would happen with Louisville if Louisville wins the ACC. I think there's no doubt that they would obviously get in over James Madison, but it's just something to think about. James Madison sitting at 8-1. I think I said 9-1. They still have 3 games left, but it's just something to think about. Tell you what, Matt, let's save John Summerall for tomorrow. I do think we are getting to a point where it feels like Auburn may have its next head coach in waiting. We will discuss that on Thursday's show. All right, if you're not subscribed, Aaron Torres Pod YouTube channel, make sure to do so. By the way, Matt, any interesting comments in the chat? I saw a lot of concerned Kentucky fans, a lot of concerned Arkansas fans. Luke says they will manipulate the rankings to ensure the ACC champ, especially if it's Duke, is in the field over a second G5 champion. I actually agree with that. I just think it's an interesting conversation that could come up. And I think the problem with James Madison as that second team is that their one loss is to an ACC team. And so if you want to argue whoever is the ACC champ, it's like, well, if it's not Louisville, it's like, well, how does, James Madison's only win is over a team that didn't even their only loss is to a team from the ACC who didn't even win the league. And so anyway, I could go on and on, but I think it's a good point. They'll manipulate the rankings. If Duke wins out, by the way, does that mean that UConn gets in? No, I'm just kidding. That's not going to happen. But if Duke wins out, they will figure out a way to manipulate the rankings. I mean, I guess at that point, Duke would have, let's see here, who's on the rest of Duke's schedule. They have the mighty North Carolina Tar Heels. They do have Virginia. So Virginia and Duke this weekend feels like a de facto ACC elimination game. Louisville, by the way, still has Clemson on the schedule. I mentioned this the other day. Pitt is actually the interesting team to watch. I don't know if people saw this. College Game Day is going to be at Pitt this weekend for Pitt Notre Dame. Pitt then plays Georgia Tech in Miami. I mean, if Pitt's either going to win out and maybe win the ACC, but they could play spoiler as well. 3 teams very much in the college football playoff race that Pitt will play down the stretch. Matt, anything else before we go ahead and get out of here? Like I said, we'll save John Summerall and Auburn for discussion. Listen, Luke's on fire today. Luke, you can just be the co-host of this show, man. You and John Talty, who I take his content all the time. So, I think the SEC is going to be very interesting, okay? So, and this is a little bit of a preview of tomorrow's show where we'll talk about Texas, Georgia, Alabama, and Oklahoma. But to me, what's interesting is what happens. Like, you want a chaos scenario for the college football playoff committee. If Oklahoma beats Alabama and if Texas beats Georgia, what the hell do you do with those 2 teams? And what do you do with the SEC in general? By the way, if Vandy wins out, remember, Vandy still has Tennessee to end the regular season. It's crazy because Tennessee is in kind of spoiler mode at this point. But Vandy right now is on a bye. They play Kentucky and Tennessee the final 2 games. But you want a chaos scenario. Texas beats Georgia this week. Alabama loses to Oklahoma. All of a sudden, at the top of the standings in the SEC, you have Texas A&M at 10-0, Alabama at 8-2, Georgia at 8-2, Ole Miss at 9-1. They'll be 10-1 if they beat Florida. Then you would have Texas, Oklahoma, Alabama. Let me put it this way. If Texas and Oklahoma win this weekend, because the notion was this, is that any 2-loss team in the SEC is going to make the college football playoff. Okay. Well, if Oklahoma and Texas win this weekend, you would have Texas A&M at 10-0. They play Sanford, so I think they're going to win. You would then have Ole Miss at 10-1. So Ole Miss and Texas A&M. Then you would have Alabama, Georgia, Texas, Oklahoma, and Vandy, all with 2 losses going into the final 2 weeks of the season. And frankly, just looking at those schedules, there's not a lot of losable games. Now, Texas does play Texas A&M. And I think to Luke's point, if Texas splits Texas A&M at home and Georgia on the road, they would have the strongest argument for a 3-loss SEC team. They would have the head-to-head win over Oklahoma. By the way, Oklahoma would have Ole Miss would have a head-to-head win over Oklahoma as well. So that's where it gets tough for Oklahoma. By the way, 2-loss Oklahoma versus 3-loss Texas would be a fascinating conversation, with Texas having the head-to-head win. The thing that hurts Texas, they're probably going to have the worst loss of any team that's in playoff contention. Losing to Florida is going to be tough on them. I will say, anyone see Billy Napier at Georgia practice on Monday and Tuesday? Didn't sit well with Florida fans. All right, I'll tell you what. I think we're going to go ahead and get out of here. If you are not subscribed to Aaron Torres Pod YouTube channel, make sure to do so. Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, Google Music, wherever you get your podcast, please make sure to subscribe. Also, make sure to rate and review the show. Go ahead, give us a quick 5 stars. Let us know what you like, what you don't like, all that good stuff. Make sure you're following on social media at Aaron_Torres on Twitter, at Aaron Torres Pod on Instagram, Aaron Torres Podcast Questions at gmail.com, Aaron Torres Podcast Questions at gmail.com. Appreciate your support. We will be back on Thursday morning. We will preview what's going to be an awesome weekend of college football. As I mentioned, Texas and Georgia, Oklahoma, and Alabama. We'll try to sneak in a little college hoops as BYU gets set to play UConn in Boston. We'll see what happens there, and we'll get to some other good stuff as well. Thank you to SeatGeek. Promo code Torres gets you $20 off your first purchase. And thank you also to Caulipuffs. Get 15% off any purchase with code Torres. Thank you to Circa as well. I'll be back Thursday. Time for me to go. Shout out to Torrent Craig. Shout out to Rachel, who hates my voice. Shout out to JJ Reddick, UF Ed. My dog is barking in the other room. She needs a walk. I'll see you all Thursday morning. Aaron Torres Pod.